How to insult a vegan, and running into a buzzsaw when you talk about overpopulation.
These are just a couple of topics next on the GrowthBusters podcast.
Calling. Call the GrowthBusters. Whoa.
Welcome to the GrowthBusters podcast about coming to terms with limits to growth. In this podcast, we work tirelessly to make it okay to be against growth. Perpetual growth of the global population and economy is just not possible, and our attempts to break the laws of physics in this regard are not turning out well. I'm Stephanie Gardner, GrowthBusters advisor, environmental law and policy wonk, and sustainable energy nerd.
And I'm Dave Gardner, senior counselor here at the Center for Growth Addiction Recovery. So here we are with part 2 of the Overpopulation think tank, a really great conversation that we had with some really brilliant people, including Stephanie Gardner, Dave Gardner, but also Nandita Bajaj, who succeeded me as executive director of World Population Balance, now called Population Balance, and she's also co-host of the Overpopulation podcast. And Sarah Bexel at the University of Denver, who's faculty director at the Center for Sustainability and clinical associate professor at the Graduate School of Social Work. And Paul Sutton, also at University of Denver. He's a professor in the Department of Geography and the Environment, teaches ecological economics, among other things. And it was his class that we spoke with on the last episode of the GrowthBusters podcast, interrupting this part 1 and part 2 of the Overpopulation think tank. So what we want to do is just finish that conversation among the 5 of us, and then Stephanie and I'll have a few comments afterward.
Plus, we'll go into some recent news items and some listener feedback. So stick around till the end.
Here we go, Overpopulation think tank part 2. All right, so here we are sitting down for part 2 of our conversation with what I called some of the smartest people really in the world on sustainability subjects. And of course, we're talking mostly about overpopulation because it doesn't get discussed enough. There's not enough intelligent conversation about it, but I think we also touch on overconsumption and economic growth, and we'll probably get into that a little bit in this episode too. You know, in our last episode, Nandita, you were sharing with us about your the approach, kind of a fresh approach that you brought to the table when you became executive director of what's now called Population Balance. And we talked at length in that last episode about just the way that you present the message in a way that's more balanced, more complete, more sensitive. You're able to get a bigger audience and they don't slam the door in your face because you say it articulately and in such a way that their fears are allayed, I guess. That's opened some doors, so I want to just ask you a little bit about some of those other doors. We briefly touched on collaborations with other groups, getting pieces published in places like Newsweek, being invited to speak at conferences, that kind of stuff. I've been invited to speak at a few places, but I think you probably in 2 years have done what I did in 10 years, I bet. Would you lay that at the door of this approach and share with us a little bit? What can you share with us about who's invited you to speak and what organizations you're developing collaborative relationship with?
Sure. So I spoke about how I'm trying to make inroads into some of these justice-oriented organizations, whether they are reproductive rights, whether they are animal rights or environmental ethics. And, a degree in humane education and understanding of humane education really helps bridge that gap. So, for example, one of the bigger invitations that I received was at this International Conference on Family Planning, which happened in Thailand last November. And it actually lined up with the 8 billion population mark on November 15th.
Did you fly to Thailand too?
I did.
Oh my gosh.
Actually, it's interesting. The only reason I applied was a virtual presentation was possible. Uh-huh. And the organizers who chose my presentation urged me to come physically. And they promised me that the impact was going to be worth it because they really liked the proposal that I had put forward and, the approach on pronatalism, which, again, was really new to them. Of course, the International Conference on Family Planning has been leading the charge on elevating reproductive rights. And reproductive rights, as we know, have been violated in the past, especially within the population movement, the circles, through a complete lack of imagination of a lot of these architects who thought that the only way to address population issues was to control people's fertility by not allowing them to have children. So there's obviously a lot of sensitivity around reproductive justice.
Yeah.
So I think this was a new angle for them to say, reproductive rights are being violated in more ways than you think. Coercive pronatalism being a huge one. As I said in the last episode, it's the oldest form of population control that no one's talking about. Mm-hmm. And I think they found that really refreshing because even in the sexual and reproductive health and rights circle, there's a lot of pronatalism. There's a lot of, like maternal, trying to prevent maternal deaths and trying to have safe deliveries. And there's just this pro-reproduction bias that it's having children is beautiful. And having children is beautiful when it's done through liberated, thoughtful, responsible decision-making. But when having children is a product of marital rape, sexual coercion, 13-year-old girls having children because of child marriage and all of those things, we have to call it for what it is. It's not a beautiful thing. It's basically ending all hope for the person who was put into that position, the mother and the child alike.
I wanted to interject a question. I love how you present pronatalism as another form of coercion. We always talk about antinatalist policy, the one-child, the evil one-child policy, the horrible things that happened in India with transistor radios and vasectomies, and how you go and you kind of flip the coin and you say pronatalism is a kind of coercion that we don't even recognize because we're fish swimming in water. And I want to touch on something that Steph mentioned at the beginning, and I want you to sort of speculate perhaps on what you think the history of this is, because I started out population growth. It's all about population. We need more antinatalist policies. And I sat next to Planned Parenthood at Earth Day handing out my condoms and pamphlets, right? And then I realized it was about women's empowerment. But I have come to believe, riffing on what Steph was saying at the very beginning, that it's capitalism. Now, I think capitalism and the subjugation of women and pronatalism are all in a positive feedback loop, right? But the subjugation of women and pronatalism predates capitalism. Right, so I mean, just speculate on the history and how capitalism. I think capitalism almost is like gasoline on the fire of pronatalism.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I wanted to add to your list of when reproduction isn't a beautiful thing, and it's not a beautiful thing when you're giving birth to a child because your government is offering you no income tax for life.
Right.
If you do that.
Exactly.
Because they want.
Sounds like Hungary.
They want a shopper, and they want a shopper, a taxpayer, and somebody to perpetuate the race.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, Paul, what you said, capitalism was the gasoline that basically supercharged pronatalism and made it, again, and so one of the things we mentioned in the Newsweek article is some of our most liberal allies are saying, hey, this is the Vox article that we mentioned, you can have kids and fight climate change at the same time. And some of these people who think they are trying to empower women by saying, don't let anyone take away your universal biological urge to have kids because that's your destiny, just because the planet is in peril, it assumes that everyone wants to have kids. And by talking about overpopulation or the climate crisis or the biodiversity crisis, we're impinging on people's desires and rights to have kids instead of actually exposing pronatalism for what it is and just saying, just saying what it is.
Well said, well said. And, we haven't even mentioned Carter Dillard. I'm really thrilled to see that you've been collaborating a lot with Carter Dillard, and he's brought to the table, he and other people in that organization, which is now used to be called Having Kids, now it's called Fair Start, that it's not just about what you want. It's about the right of that potential child. That needs to figure into it too. And so especially if you're writing something about climate change, that you can solve climate change and reproduce, well, you need to also think about what kind of world you're bringing a child into. Yeah, that child has rights.
So Nandita, what was the reception like to your presentation in Thailand and brushing shoulders with the reproductive rights groups that we're now kind of talking about do have this pronatalism undercurrent still? What was their response?
Interestingly, I heard from another fellow attendee there that there was actually a bit of a backlash to even allowing population, this is before I spoke, to even giving a platform at the Family Planning Conference to a couple of population organizations. Population Matters was there, Population Connection was there, and we were there at Population Balance. And people just said population should just not be part of the conversation. And luckily, the organizers, stood their ground and said, no, population is an issue, and we are going to allow people to bring in their views and their solutions. So thankfully, we were allowed to speak. And after I spoke, I was actually quite nervous. You can actually hear it in my talk. Part of that nervousness was just being on stage, and the other part of the nervousness was who I was presenting to. I felt the audience might be hostile toward my message. I did not receive any backlash, I'm happy to say. I've only received positive responses. There may be people who don't agree with my message who haven't said anything to me, or maybe are saying things behind my back, but I haven't received anything directly. The organizers of the conference, one of whom is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, were very supportive of my message and wrote a very positive response to having given me the platform to bring this type of reproductive coercion to surface.
I think there's some value right there. I'll bet you that wasn't a topic of conversation in the halls at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And now it is, hopefully. Yeah. There was probably a line of people waiting to talk to you when you...
There was in my classroom.
Good. That's good.
I had a much warmer crowd, I think, in Sarah's and Paul's classes.
Well, I can say that my experience as a grad student, my master's thesis was measuring public opinion of population issues in California, Santa Barbara, during Prop 187, which is an anti-immigrant policy that was being proposed in California at the time. And my experience as my master's degree that I was running into a buzzsaw of people on the right and the left that didn't want to talk about this, and I ran away. I didn't have the courage. I'm not as good at nuance and subtlety as you are in terms of being eloquent about speaking about these issues. You've captured a lot of things that were rattling around in my head that I haven't been able to express, and I greatly appreciate that. So I ran away. I just started using nighttime satellite imagery as a proxy measure of people, and I did the very sciencey kind of engineering thing, and I use it as a measure of ecological footprint. And I kind of had to work around a different way because really addressing what I was a ZPG activist, and taking that question on as an academic was a death knell. It would have ruined I would have never gotten a job as a professor.
Sure.
If I really went forward with my population activism as my scholarship. So I understand your nervousness at that conference.
Yes. And I, even when I was designing the course, when I wanted to explore designing this course that I'm now teaching at Antioch, I was just surprised beyond measure how supportive the faculty at the Institute for Humane Education were. And I really owe this platform to them, because had it not been for our amazing colleagues Zoe Weil and Mary Pat Champeau, who really championed this cause, and they said, we need to talk about, humane education is the place where we talk about difficult things. We do not shy away from difficult conversations. And they said this has been a very difficult conversation for much too long, and absolutely we're going to give you the platform. And had they not given me the platform, I wouldn't have come to work with you, Dave, as an intern, and I would not be the executive director of Population Balance. So thanks to academia, like academics like you both, Paul and Sarah, working at DU, trying to push the boundaries there. I know that there are folks, within your circles who don't agree with this issue. And this discourse has been silenced in academia. We know students are graduating from some of the top schools internationally, international bodies of students who come to Western schools. They graduate with the understanding that it's not okay to talk about population. And I think we're doing disservice to our young people.
I'm curious, do you think personally, my sense is that it's an elephant in the room that most people on the street know.
Yeah.
And academics are just like, la, 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 la. We're not talking about that. It's weird. It's like the more educated they are, the more taboo it is. I mean, because when you talk about people on the street, I think they get it more than academics do.
Totally. It's completely bizarre. When I talk to somebody, for example, overpopulation as a word is a taboo word.
Absolutely.
And, I talk quite openly about how I'm trying to reclaim the word and put a positive spin to it, because from an ecocentric perspective, if we are not able to say that our species has overtaken the planet, then we're telling lies, right?
Yeah.
But if you talk to anybody else in any other country that is buckling under the burden of overpopulation, that's the only word they understand. They would say, why aren't you allowed to use the word overpopulation? But it's this Western lefty phenomena where we've just turned this word into a really bad thing and turned this conversation into a bad thing. And who is suffering the consequences? The most marginalized communities who don't have personal or reproductive autonomy, and their rights are being violated. And, we're engaging in, as Paul and I have been talking, modern-day slavery. Yeah. Why do we benefit from population growth? Because we can continue to violate people's rights in other countries who work as modern-day slaves for us.
And I think this is why Wackernagel's been so successful with his ecological footprint, because it really is, it's just a different way of saying overpopulation.
Right.
And so I think that's he's nuanced it. And
yes.
Ecological footprint is something people can embrace because they don't have to say overpopulation.
Exactly. Yes.
So I'm really curious. We'll put a link in the show notes to this piece, your most recent writing that was published in Newsweek in late February. Pro-birth policies are killing us.
Can I just say one thing about that article?
Yeah.
It was co-authored by me and Kirsten Stade, my
Kirsten was
communications
co-author.
manager.
I missed that.
Except you missed that because Newsweek and all other journalists only allow one author. So I want to give her a shout out for co-authoring that piece with me. It took us months to work on that piece because we were actually being courted by New York Times for 2 months to write that piece, and then they dumped us at the very last minute. And thanks to Newsweek for picking us up. But it's shared responsibility. And then I don't know if he wants a shout out, but Steve Kent is the one who helped get it placed. He is our publicist who works with Phoebe Barnard's organization, Stable Planet Alliance. So it's a collective effort that got me in there.
That collaboration. Great job, Kirsten, too. I'm going to circle back just briefly to the class that you've taught. Now, how many sections of the class have you been through now? Have you done 2?
2 at DU, yeah.
No, you're pronatalist.
Oh, in pronatalism class, yes. Oh, yeah, no, I've been running it for a year and a half. So I've done 5 terms.
5, wow, time flies.
Yes. And my current term is an incredible group of people. And I'd love to actually talk about the current term. We have representatives in my current class from 5 continents. We have 3 students from Africa, so Kenya, Uganda, and Nigeria. We have a student from Colombia, 3 students from North America, and 1 student from Germany. And
I hope you have Mitt Romney, too.
But it is a fabulous class because, again, I've been spending so much time with Paul that I keep mentioning him. It really feels like a co-creative discussion because my understanding of pronatalism is based on, obviously, a lot of lived experience, interviews with people, reading about it. But when I talk to people from different countries some are parents, some are non-parents, their lived experience of pronatalism is so helpful for me to understand. And it's so different from mine. And there's so much more nuance to it. So I'm loving engaging with all of these incredible, I mean, they're not really students, they're peers.
Neat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if somebody's interested in exploring that, we can put a link of some sort in the show notes, I assume, and probably you can Google Nandita Bajaj and Antioch and probably find it.
It's on our website, and it's the course. The nice thing about this course is open to anyone in the world. It's discussion-based. We meet once a week, and we have 2 hours, salon discussions on Zoom with a lot of both personal discussions, but also there's a lot of good research that backs up what we discuss.
I do want to talk about those insufferable vegans.
Two sitting right at the table here.
I haven't really experienced this, but I hear that complaint that vegans are kind of overbearing and trying to take over the world and convince everybody that they need to stop eating animals. And I'm sure that kind of that goal is in the back of your mind, but you two are more polite about it. And I'm just digging myself into a hole here. Snip.
I can help you dig if you want me to help.
But anyway, I guess it's fair to say that there are I've seen essays about the fact that 8 billion people is totally sustainable. We just need to all be vegan. Why are you worrying about overpopulation?
Yeah,
population isn't the issue. Fertility rate's not the issue. The issue is that is industrialized agriculture or animal agriculture. And Corey Cockshaw, I think, wrote that we could feed 8 billion people if we weren't eating animal products. I think we could do that, but I don't know that we could do that without continuing to screw up the
It would be
climate.
The planet as a giant human feedlot that would be very not resilient, very unstable if you succeeded at all. I don't think it would work, but it's certainly a sort of planetary feedlot kind of thing.
But that's a step in the right direction for Rory Cockshaw, because I wanted to bring him up because this is a vegan who has changed his thinking and written about it as a result of the Overpopulation podcast, right?
Yeah. It was such a wonderful email to receive. Rory is a UK vegan campaigner, and he had written this blog a few months ago saying, overpopulation is a myth and it's going too far to say that people should be having fewer kids. In fact, I think he may have even said some of the same things that a lot of population deniers say, that it's, kind of going into the territory of population control and racism, etc. And he's vegan, so, he's interested in animal rights, and so am I. And so he started listening to podcasts that butt up against his own thinking, just to see what the other side was saying, which I think is what a great way to engage in critical thinking.
Good for him. Yeah.
And he started listening to our podcast. And I think after listening to a few episodes, he said he binge listened to a bunch of them. He came around and said, wow, there's a different way of looking at population that is from a place of compassion and understanding of human rights and gender equality and all the other things we talk about. And I think the bridge building that I was talking about is being an animal rights activist and being a social justice advocate and ecological justice advocate. It allows me to, I think, reach people in each of the different categories. And so I think that happened with Corey, seeing that, a fellow vegan is talking about overpopulation in a way that's not threatening to human rights.
Yeah.
And so he came around, he wrote a new article, and he called this new blog Backpedaling on Overpopulation. And he, instead of deleting the previous article, he actually said, these are all the fallacies I had bought into, and that I'm correcting myself, all of the things that I misunderstood.
Whoa!
And
Let's have the link to that article in the podcast.
Yes.
'Cause I
Link in the
will read
show
that.
notes.
Yeah.
Link in the
Yes.
show notes.
I like this guy already.
Yeah, I just think what a great example of someone who publicly allows himself to change his thinking and accept that we can, it's a very positive, healthy thing to allow yourself to learn something new and change your mind on something, because we are so set on all-knowing, kind of just being super confident about our own views.
And he was really honest in this piece about, sort of being half-baked a little bit, that his thinking is evolving. So I will forgive him for maybe one or two little things in there that made me think, oh, do I want to share this or not? But mostly, I mean, there's a lot of brilliance in this piece, Backpedaling on Overpopulation. Really brilliant lines that I found myself highlighting, Paul. And there was one I want to share. Veganism is necessary but not sufficient.
Yes. And that's where we align, is because we, of course, Population Balance are advocating for a move towards plant-based, plant-forward diets for people, because we do, from a humane education perspective, we are advocating for reduction of suffering for everyone, and a perspective of framing of reverence towards the planet, towards all of the beings of the planet. And so veganism is definitely one arm of our
But plants aren't beings. The broccoli didn't die screaming.
Okay,
Oh, no.
Paul, we're not going to go there today. You're trying to get the insufferable out of me right now.
Broccoli rights here. So that is really pretty cool. I mean, the conversation that's real conversation out there.
Honestly, I don't know if I can admit to having done what Rory did in actually trying to understand to go that far, to see what the other side is thinking. I think that's really courageous and brave to do that so publicly. So big shout out to him.
Yeah, because how many of us here watch Tucker Carlson?
I occasionally do, to keep my finger on the pulse of the craziness, right? I listened to Rush Limbaugh occasionally. He's often more entertaining than public radio.
Especially now that he's passed on. He's really entertaining.
Yeah, he enraged me, no doubt, but it's sort of like be aware of your enemy, know your enemy kind of thing.
My wife and I turn on Fox News every now and then just because we want to see what they're talking about.
Sarah, do you want to say anything about veganism and your approach to animal protection? You taught this amazing course, and you teach a course on ecological justice.
Yeah, I'm stuck on vegans can be insufferable. I think if I can say just a little bit about that, I would guess that most of us did go through a phase where we were insufferable to somebody in our lives. And,
I really doubt that.
oh, you talk to my mom.
You're too nice. You're too nice.
But I think usually, some people choose to be a vegan purely for, their own health and whatnot, for, things internal to themselves. Most vegans choose to be vegan for very external purposes. And it is, as Nandita has said many times, is because we see the suffering and we allow ourselves to see the suffering. And once you open that door and open your heart to seeing that level of suffering that one species is inflicting on all of the others, you can't unsee it, right? Maybe you can, but most people cannot. And I think that when folks meet a vegan, I think one of the things, if they are going through that insufferable stage, we have to kick and scream for a while, because we are in such agony, truly agony, knowing what we're doing to other beautiful sentient beings. And we're so angry that other people refuse to see it, and because they want to have a stick of bacon on Sunday morning, or maybe every morning. And I think that is something that is not really understood. The people who are insufferable in that moment are really, really in pain. And I mean, not sleeping, not eating well, maybe not even able to eat because their pain is so difficult. And so it does come out as, this sort of self-righteous sort of, for some reason, I think it's an interpretation that happens psychologically in people's mind. It's not that a vegan thinks that they're better than other people. It's that they just want people to see. And mincing words can even feel like a violation of those that you're trying to defend. So, and then, quite frankly, we all have had the backlash, and where our family members don't want to talk to us anymore, our best friends don't want to talk to us anymore, our partners don't want to talk to us anymore. And then we're forced to become nuanced in our conversations about that. And so a lot of times when I was teaching animal protection, I had students that were the full gamut, students who had just become vegan and were still in that stage, all the way up to folks who had been, vegan for decades. And so providing a supportive community for people as they move through that was an important part of the course. It wasn't just the content. It was, supporting people on those journeys. And many folks who were vegetarian or still omnivores. So yeah, just something about that is I just invite people to see people's pain instead of immediately kicking them out of your family or your friend circle.
That just really touched me to hear the pain in your voice. It makes me think we should just do a whole episode diving into that sometime, if you can take the pain.
Yeah, that was beautiful, Sarah. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I was going to joke about going out for lunch later for a double Western bacon cheeseburger, but now I can't even tell that joke.
Yeah.
Edit it out.
Yeah.
That's gone.
And I think we can make many parallels to the population, issue as well. Again, it's, I think psychologically, immediately people feel attacked. So, if a vegan walks in the room, everybody who's non-vegan in the room immediately feels like they're being attacked just because a vegan walked in the room. And I think it's the same thing with talking about overpopulation. If somebody comes in with that idea that overpopulation is a problem and people in the room know it and they have children, the people with children immediately feel attacked. Mm-hmm. Even though that person who just walked in the room doesn't mean it that way at all. They just want to have the conversation. And I think it's a very parallel sort of psychological construct that happens in social settings.
Good point. So you've recently started the Center for Sustainability?
Well, yes, our current name is Center for Sustainability.
Thinking about changing the name already, but tell me a little bit about the genesis of that and what you guys are trying to do.
We've actually at the University of Denver had a Center for Sustainability for over a decade, and run by one of our wonderful colleagues, Chad King. He recently moved on to other work, working in carbon neutrality, which is wonderful. And what the University of Denver realizes that we needed to rethink the way that we have been doing. So Chad was basically tasked with everything from facilities to procurement to academics to research, all of the things. And so the university is parsing that out into different sort of ways. So we've got a facilities person doing all of that, a couple of procurement people. And then in the Center for Sustainability, we've been tasked with really just curriculum and research. And so it's kind of an exciting new frontier for us to be embarking upon. But I think maybe one reason they put me in this new role, it's an inaugural role at the University of Denver, is because we want to kind of push those boundaries. And trust me, my partner in crime is right here, Dr. Paul Sutton, in that the term sustainability has been critiqued for decades already. And a lot of us that have been in this movement for a very long time are looking for different directions. And so the one that we're really toying with now, and we're getting some pretty positive feedback from the administration, is changing it to Center for Regenerative Futures.
Do you really mean critiqued, or do you mean co-opted, or both?
Oh, probably both.
Probably both.
Yeah.
Or just, it's like critical thinking. It was a buzzword in education. We got to do critical thinking. And I'm sure DEI is going to be in the same bucket 5-10 years from now.
Yeah.
But sustainability has kind of become meaningless, sadly. So I was going to ask you how you were going to fight that, but why fight it? You could do an end run around it, I guess.
We're hoping to do an end run around it, and so we're trying to seek funding. Maybe we'll talk to you over lunch about, do you know people that are truly interested in system change? Like, one of the things our the university wants, the administrators, is who are the people that are going to provide funding to a Center for Regenerative Futures that's going to promote system change. And I would argue that Bill Gates doesn't want system change, and Mark Zuckerberg doesn't want system change, and Jeff Bezos doesn't want system change, and I don't even think the NSF wants system change. And so the big funding agencies are people and institutions that have big piles of money, and they got those big piles of money because the system's working for them perfectly well. So it's really difficult to find people that truly want to fund system change that have funds, because often they're like, the system's working just fine for me. And I think the book Winners Take All by Anand Giridharadas really nails that. The elite charade of trying to change the world. If you are Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates, do you really want to change the world?
That book is on my nightstand. I haven't started it yet, but it's on my up and coming to read list.
I have another book suggestion for you. And Nandita might be interviewing one of the authors. Naomi Oreskes, who wrote The Merchants of Doubt, has just written a book called The Big Myth: How American Business Taught Us to Loathe Government and Love the Free Market. And I think it is one of the ways that capitalism is gasoline on oppression of women and pronatalism, and that it's this whole positive feedback loop on growth. And that's one of the challenges that Sarah and I are experiencing. We want to do this regenerative futures, and I've been having my students read Jason Hickel's Degrowth, less is more, degrowth as a way to save the world. And we're getting a lot of pushback even from our own faculty. We can't say degrowth. We can't do that. We got to keep the degrowth thing out of there, because they were unaware that there's even a difference between green growth was okay. They thought that was what sustainability was. And so,
wow,
it's uphill. It's challenging.
Well, American Enterprise Institute, Chamber of Commerce, Fox News, and the Club for Growth are just going to love this episode.
Maybe they'll have a Rory moment. And they'll write back.
We can only hope.
Growth.
We can always hope. We can always hope.
And do you think that your listeners know what regeneration? I mean, it sounds super obvious when we say it, but
some. You want to offer a nutshell?
Soundbite.
Yeah, just for those people who, haven't been exposed to that word.
Yeah, and I think one of the aspects of it that's important to highlight is this is traditional wisdom. This is indigenous wisdom that humans knew for the majority of time that we've been a species on this planet. That, you can use and utilize the soil, the water, all of the, resources that Earth so well provides. But you also have to give the earth time to regenerate and to heal from anything that has been taken. And this is wisdom that all humans had prior to industrialization, and maybe even prior to agriculture and all of those kinds of things. And I think that's where sustainability falls short, is it's more of that sort of dialogue of let's sustain what we're doing. We just have to figure out green ways of doing that. And I think that's, one of the things I think that's really hard on my students is, all of them are like, oh, we'll just get an electric car and everything will be okay. And then they choose in my class to look at things like lithium mining, and they find out, oh my God, look at all of the people, the animals, the soil, the water that my electric car, and especially my students as social workers, they see the human rights, implications of the world going electric. And it is so crushing to them when we, society, the media, our politicians are propping up all of these, this is the positive way to do things, that this is taking us in the right direction. While not at all acknowledging all of the oppressions inherent in any type of solution that I so far have, read, been exposed to. But then when you start talking about regeneration, that's when the light bulbs come on. And I think the hard part, for us at this point in this juncture is, yes, we're going to do this. We feel really good about it. We're getting great support for it. But then we have to be able to show our students examples. It can't be this philosophical discussion. We need to get our students to a regenerative farm, to a regenerative co-op, talking about true community mutual aid. It can't be something that they're reading in a textbook. They have to feel it. because our young people, if I may say, are quite addicted to the iPhone, to gaming, to, all of the creature comforts, and then some, that all of these abusive sort of ways humans behave, they're addicted to that. Let's just put it that way. And how do we make that future feel, one, attainable, and a place where perhaps they can feel well? And I think our young people think that the only place to feel well is attached to technology, is attached to these creature comforts. They've never experienced another way of feeling well, and they need to have those experiences, not just be told, hey, wouldn't it be nice? kind of thing. So that's what we hope to do with this, is study it, of course, because that's what we do in academia, teach it, and then we want to very much have that experiential aspect of it.
Great intentions. This will be fun to follow.
I'm just so grateful to learn about what you all are up to. It's such vital work. You're approaching it with grace and empathy, and
at least Nandita and Sarah.
Yeah. I don't know about you, Paul. And I am deeply envious that I can't join you all for lunch, but it's been really great having you on the podcast. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you. And I'm looking forward to lunch too. I think we just need to hang out with them as much as we can and absorb some of the brilliance that they bring to the table that for some reason testosterone gets in the way of.
Yeah, I agree. And you're going to be part of the Center for Regenerative Futures. I'm sure of it.
One more thing that I won't be able to say no to.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear more. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Nandita Bajaj, Sarah Bexel, Paul Sutton, Stephanie Gardner. Good to see you.
Dave Gardner.
Hey, you running for president, Dave? You want to pick a pitch? I missed your podcast or the meeting you had Saturday. I was at a Democrats on the Mountain thing.
Definitely exploring the idea. I'll fill you in over lunch.
Good.
A little bit. It could happen.
I'll vote for you.
Really?
All right. Well, I just got to say, my sense is that I saved most of the best stuff for part 2.
Yeah, there's some really insightful things in there, right? Just listening to Nandita and Sarah, especially, they just have a lot of wisdom about this topic.
Yeah, kind of some noteworthy things was it was kind of interesting to hear Nandita's comments about the backlash that apparently had happened behind the scenes to giving the platform to a couple of population organizations when she spoke at the International Conference on Family Planning in Thailand last November. That was also good news, though, to hear that after she spoke, there wasn't any backlash. She said she got only positive responses, so I was glad to hear that.
Well, and I think that's just a testament to how eloquent and kind and empathetic the way she reaches out to others about this topic is. She just has a special talent for that. That's apparent.
Yeah, it's some really good messaging for sure. And I really kind of got a kick out of, it's disappointing, but not surprising, Paul describing how he ran into a buzzsaw when he tried to write his master's thesis on measuring public opinion on population issues. This was a while ago, but you might run into this same buzzsaw even today. And I don't know, maybe that's enough said. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I think it's something we discuss a lot, right?
Yeah, and another disappointing thing was that this is truthful that he said, he actually changed topics and did not write his master's thesis about that. And he said that taking that issue on would have been the death knell for his academic career. And that's pretty sad.
On the other hand, it sounds like Nandita has gotten a lot of support from Antioch University where she teaches, so that made me feel optimistic.
Yeah, when she was designing her course, Pronatalism and Overpopulation, the personal, cultural, and global implications of having a child. We'll put a link in the show notes, and if you're interested in exploring that course, anyone around the world can sign up for the next term of that graduate level course. And of course, overpopulation as a word is taboo. That came up, and I was glad to hear that Nandita is continuing where I left off at Population Balance now, which is trying to get that word used more and more often. We've got to use that word because if you're just talking about population growth, you're not acknowledging that we are in overshoot today, that we have too many people on the planet. We can't solve our overshoot problem just by ending population growth. We have got to bend the curve and get human population on a sustainable course, which means contracting back down toward 2 or 3 billion people, which is what the most credible scientific estimates are of a sustainable population on Earth.
I'm really excited to hear about the kind of the transformation that's going on at the Center for Sustainability at DU and renaming it to the Center for Regenerative Futures. I think Paul is a big proponent of imagining the future that we want and then working toward that. And I think that this naming convention really helps illustrate that and also tosses out the term sustainability, which has been, greenwashed to death at this point.
Yeah, and I hope he does follow up and invite me to participate in some way, because I definitely want to make sure that, and I of course, with Paul and Sarah there, I don't think I need to worry too much about it, but sometimes I worry a little bit about regenerative economy. People tend to kind of get focused on, on the circular economy and reuse.
Circular economy, yeah.
Yeah. And, of course, that's a really important way for us to reorganize our economy, but it's not anywhere close to being sufficient to get back into a sustainable, use that word, balance with nature. I do want to comment on how I did my best to insult Sarah and Nandita as vegans. And I could tell that Nandita kind of got the joke. I'm not sure about Sarah. I think she felt insulted, and I really, you know me, I'm just a joker, kind of repeating what you hear out there. But it was good. I think it generated a good conversation about, and Sarah articulated it well, explaining how vegans might come off as self-righteous. But the key word there is come off. Not actually be self-righteous, but be easily misinterpreted as self-righteous.
Yeah, I really valued her perspective.
And I think it was pretty clear that she was, in tears part of the time while she was talking about that. And I'm mentioning that just because if it wasn't clear to you, she was. I mean, it was a really poignant, heartfelt moment to hear Sarah talk about our cruelty to animals. Key moment in this episode.
Yeah.
I think it was Paul when he brought up an interesting book, The Big Myth, How American Business Taught Us to Loathe Government and Love the Free Market. One of the co-authors was Dr. Naomi Oreskes, who was a co-author of Merchants of Doubt, which is a really important book that was published in 2010. Paul mentioned that he thought Nandita was going to be interviewing her on the Overpopulation podcast. And yes, indeed, that's the most recent episode. That episode is out. So we'll include a link in the show notes, but it's easy if you're a podcast listener. Be sure to search for the Overpopulation podcast and find that most recent episode. Really great conversation with Naomi. We'll put a link in the show notes to that new book also. Very interesting perspective. I think that's all I've got in the way of a debrief about this conversation we had with them.
Shall we turn to some news and listener feedback?
Let's do it. What interesting items have appeared in our inbox since that great episode with the college students? How do we get out of this mess?
Well, we had a few comments on our website on the episode. Tracy wrote, "Students all seemed wounded. They were unable to connect our current problems with the fact that we are part of the planet. One student even talked about the human differences that set us apart from nature. OMG, that is the kind of thinking that has brought us to this place. Here is my solution to our predicament. Let our number one responsibility be to the planet, as stewards. All decisions filtered through the priority of what is good for the planet and the non-human beings while causing no harms to humans." Thanks, Tracy, for your comment. I actually felt the same way. I did notice that when I was listening to the conversation, that there was no conversation about the other species or organisms being impacted. It was very self-centered.
Interesting. And then Mike Matuski wrote, "This is interesting. I want text versions of GrowthBusters podcasts. Maybe I'm an old fart, but this podcasting and YouTube crap is beyond me. I detest fast-talking, appeal-to-emotion media with a passion. If I can't copy and paste a text quote, I probably won't bother going there, in spite of the fact you seem to have a lot to offer." thought it was important to share that because podcasts are getting easier and easier to transcribe. And so I've been thinking, Stephanie, or wondering whether we ought to consider including transcripts of the podcast on the website when we publish.
That's probably a great idea because it could maybe help them be found in online searching too. If someone's searching on a topic, maybe the podcast episode would come up as a result.
Yeah, and some of that's going on behind the scenes already. Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts are kind of working on that behind the scenes, which is one reason why I've kind of been dragging my feet, because I thought that might just sort of happen automatically. But it could be that we could and should go ahead and jumpstart that process. Why don't you let us know what you think about that? I'd be interested in knowing whether the listeners would put a value on that or not. So let us know. Shoot an email to us at podcast@growthbusters.org, or you can even call the GrowthBusters hotline and give us your opinion about that. That's 719-402-1400.
Hey, any way to get the old farts tuning off Fox News and tuning in to GrowthBusters podcasts or reading a GrowthBusters podcast is a win in my book.
Hey, as an old fart, I resent that remark and resemble it too. Okay, and next comment?
Book Hermit wrote, "We can't and won't get out of this mess. The mess will simply collapse on us when it gets large enough."
Well, you might be right.
Yep, that seems likely.
But we're working hard. We're pedaling as fast as we can to make sure. Yeah.
Seems likely at this point. We'll see.
But we're not going to relax and party as the ship goes down. We're going to try really hard to see if we can't get that rudder turned.
You're not going to make a beeline for the lifeboat, which I guess is one of these spaceships that the space billionaires are building. You're not going to push women and children out of your way, Dad? As you run?
No, and speaking of those lifeboats, if Mars is looking good to you, then we have really up planet Earth.
That's true.
I have no interest in living on Mars. We also had an email from Joe Brooks who wrote, I live near Traverse City, a small town in northwest Michigan that is experiencing exponential growth, habitat destruction, traffic, and infrastructure problems. And instead of addressing these problems, the city commission wants more growth. Great podcasts, but I think you're preaching to the choir. And, I wanted to share this because this writer, Joe, thanks for writing, is talking about, really growth addiction on a local level. And I think a frustration with that is one of the things that brings many people to the GrowthBusters project. And yet here on the podcast, we tend to spend a lot more of our time talking about more global issues. So I just want you to know, Joe, that I've always tried to keep my finger on the pulse of this local growth addiction, and I'm planning some future episodes where we'll focus on that, because you can't have a sustainable world if it's full of communities that are addicted to unsustainable growth. Just can't do it. But also interesting about that email is he included a news story that I wouldn't have known about otherwise, or it would have taken a while anyway. The headline was, Governor Whitmer plans group to tackle state population crisis. Well, Stephanie, what do you think that population crisis is?
It is that there's not enough people.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Certainly Michigan suffered from people leaving. I know Detroit had that issue. And so it's easy for the governor to be guilty of short-termism and want to goose the growth of the state of Michigan. And of course, we're seeing that on a global scale with a lot of leaders of various nations trying to get their population back on a growth path. We'll be talking about that ad nauseum over coming episodes of GrowthBusters. So more on that soon.
Well, what's really ironic, and I think I must be in a sarcastic or spicy mood today, what's really ironic is that the Great Lakes region is actually going to be one of the regions where climate refugees migrate to, because it's more protected from a lot of the impacts of climate change compared to the Southeast or the Northeast or the Southwest in the United States. So she's going to get her wish. It might be, over the coming decades, but there's going to be a lot of people knocking at the door.
So if she's thinking about trying to increase fertility, we should get her to relax and just start making plans and making room for climate refugees. We'll send them all your way because we don't need them in the American Southwest, where we overachieved in colonizing the West. And I'm just bringing that up because a day doesn't go by that there isn't a new headline about what we're going to do about the Colorado River that can no longer meet the needs of the current population. But everyone's really wringing their hands about how we're going to be able to keep the boom going. Oh my God, how can we keep population coming in here? How can we keep developing if we don't have the water? And so the solutions being discussed are not getting over the growth addiction in the American Southwest, sadly. So we'll be doing a couple of episodes about that very soon. We really welcome your feedback. You can send an email to podcast@growthbusters.org. And I really want to encourage you to call the hotline and leave us a recorded message for us to play. I don't know why we're not getting much activity there. Don't be shy. Call 719-402-1400. Leave us a message and we'll play that on a future episode.
Well, shall we talk about some recent news?
All right. Shall we start with the most offensive?
Yeah, this was absolutely shocking to me. It's just so icky. Do you want to read the headline? It's a press release.
Very offensive. The headline is Fertility Counts. Merck launches new initiative to underscore the importance of sustainable population growth in APAC region. So they've got this fertility counts program that they're launching, a new fertility policy toolkit designed by Economist Impact and supported by the huge pharmaceutical company Merck, that proposes evidence-based policy interventions to build more family-friendly societies in the Asia-Pacific region. Why? Because everybody's wringing their hands about the fact that finally population growth is being discontinued. It's being canceled.
This is coercive pronatalism in action. This is so gross to me. This just is so blatantly an example of a huge corporation trying to literally have more human beings created to buy their products. Like, this feels so dystopian to me. Am I the only one feeling this way about this? Who thought that this was a good idea? Who thought that they should put a press release out about this? They should have just done this behind the scenes.
They shouldn't be proud of it. So let us know what you think. Yeah, it is so disappointing and disgusting. Why are things like that happening, Stephanie? This is a test. Pop quiz.
Because our economic system is broken?
Well, that's part of it, but it's also because discussing overpopulation is like running into a buzzsaw. That's because people are afraid to discuss this topic. So there's ignorance, misinformation. You know, the people at Merck don't know any better. They don't listen to the GrowthBusters podcast. Overshoot literacy needs to be spread around the world as quickly as possible. I don't think we'll even put a link in the show notes to that. We don't want to give that any more oxygen than necessary. But we will put a link in the show notes to Population Denialism is Reminiscent of Climate Denialism, an excellent piece published in the month of May and written by none other than Kirsten Stade, Nandita Bajaj's partner in crime over at Population Balance. She's the communications director.
Yeah, I found her piece to just be awesome. Really articulate, backed up with a ton of great evidence, all about how population denialism is reminiscent of climate denialism and its disregard for science and its failure to acknowledge the suffering of millions. Kind of boils down to that. That's a direct quote from her piece.
Yeah. Great take on this. A must read. Absolutely. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Go straight to this link in the show notes.
Well argued.
Yeah. And Kirsten, I'm a big fan. She actually, I don't know if you know this, Stephanie, but she actually volunteered on the GrowthBusters project back when we were finishing the film and working on getting it out into the world.
I did not know that. Thank you, Kirsten.
What else do we have in the news department?
Gosh, we have a couple of former presidents with very different talking points. The president of Ireland, Michael D. Higgins, he spoke at a think tank and he condemned the obsession with economic growth He condemned neoliberalism and urged the country to rebalance economy, ecology, and ethics. We found this in the Irish Times. We'll post a link to that.
I'm sorry, we must have a bad connection. I could have sworn that you said the leader of one of the countries in the world spoke against pursuit of endless economic growth.
I know, right?
Could not have heard right.
Yeah, you have to do a double take. He said, our obsession with inexorable economic expansion expresses perhaps a desire to transcend our material limits and rise above the state of nature. Yet this growth fixation paradoxically increases the potency of those very limits. Yeah, crazy. Crazy that a politician is saying this.
Yeah, so President Michael D. Higgins of Ireland is now on the wall in the GrowthBusters Hall of Fame.
Yep.
Congratulations, and thank you, sir.
We need more of that leadership. He's basically asking all of the brightest minds and especially economists in Ireland to rethink how we're doing things. And that is exactly what we need everywhere.
We do. We need a president in the United States that talks like that. Any ideas?
And speaking of former presidents, as a counterpoint to Mr. Higgins in Ireland, we have a clip from the one who shall not be named.
And I will ask Congress to support baby bonuses for young parents to help launch a new baby boom.
This is shockingly ill-informed, but it's not so shocking that it's ill-informed, is it? So that's one of the candidates for president of the United States who doesn't have any overshoot literacy.
Yeah.
Enough said?
Well, no, because you also brought to my attention that he has this weird plan to have freedom cities and flying cars and lots of babies and some sort of like quantum leap agenda, which is very weird. Did you want to link to that Daily Mail article in the show notes?
I suppose we'll put a link in there, and we may talk more about that in a future episode, but it's so hard to give any oxygen to that person.
Yep.
Flying cars and lots of babies. That would qualify as a fairy tale.
I think that's it. I think we might do a news-focused episode next time because there's a lot of stuff that has been put out there that probably merits some attention and discussion. So I think we'll do that one next, maybe.
There is. And so I can tell you this, that in the GrowthBusters email update that goes out about the same time this episode gets published, there will be links to a number of interesting news items and essays out there. And so that's one way to kind of jumpstart that. If you can't wait, if you really want to get those links, then if you're not already subscribed to GrowthBusters email updates, check the show notes. There's always a link in there to get on that subscription list and be in the know. Are we ready for Honey, I Shrunk My Footprint?
Yeah, I think we're quite overdue.
I have one that's really not all that unique and not really all that hard to do, but it's still kind of noteworthy. I went to a weekend concert outdoors called Meadowgrass that happens in the forest outside of Colorado Springs every year. And I figured that I would get a glass of wine at some point from one of the vendors, and I anticipated that they would probably be serving it in these little plastic disposable cups that might be recyclable on some planet, probably are just getting thrown in the trash, and just can't bear to do that. So I did what I always do, and that is I threw a couple of my little stainless steel reusable, rewashable cups into my backpack so that I could use those for the wine. And so I walked up to the wine booth with my stainless steel cups and said, I want a glass of Cabernet, and thrust my hand out with my stainless steel cup, and they thrust their hand out to me with a can of wine. Curses, foiled again.
Well, I think it is better than a glass bottle, which the wine would have been put into, and it's better than a little plastic cup. So without it maybe coming right out of the barrel into your stainless steel cup, it's an improvement, perhaps.
Yeah, I guess it is. Since they knew that everybody in the crowd wasn't going to show up with their own cup, then recyclable aluminum can is a good way to go.
Yeah, and aluminum actually is recycled.
But I was still a little bit disappointed. But I do want to give the festival kudos because it's something that you don't run into often enough. All too often, events like this, water is made available, as bottled water. People, the only way they can get water to quench their thirst is to buy, a bottle of manufactured water that was shipped in, bottled by Nestle and shipped in. And not so at Meadowgrass. At Meadowgrass, they discourage the people attending from bringing bottled water, and the vendors aren't selling bottled water. And there are refill stations throughout where you can refill your reusable water bottle that you're encouraged to bring. So I was thrilled to see that.
Very cool. So mine is I try and get out on a walk every morning, and I was walking and talking with one of my friends on the phone, and partway through my walk, I stumbled across someone's garbage at the end of the driveway on the side of the curb, and they were throwing away a IKEA cabinet door, probably a 2.5 foot by 6 foot white melamine sort of cabinet door, and it had scratches on it and was dirty and had some holes in it. But I was in the middle of a reorganization project of our mudroom, and I was trying to figure out how I could build some shelves to store some of our gear, our outdoor gear. And when I saw this cabinet door, I thought to myself, oh, this would be perfect to be a shelf. And so even though I had like at least a 15-minute walk home, I grabbed the cabinet door and just like walked home with it. And there was a garbage truck that drove by at one point and honked at me. I don't know if they like could tell that I was scavenging other people's garbage, but I think they thought it was amusing. But I trimmed it down. I was able to sort of cut off some of the more damaged part of it. And this is in an unfinished mudroom that is full of spiders, and it's not a nice finished part of our house. So something like this was perfect for out there, and I got it installed. We had some leftover building materials, so we were able to build the structure to hold up the shelf and to hold some of our ski gear and stuff. So it's all worked out beautifully, and just was able to save something from the landfill.
That is brilliant. And it's not the first time that you've done that. You might be thinking, geez, saving a cabinet door from the landfill, or using one less plastic cup at a concert, what difference is that going to make? Well, there's a couple things I have to say about that. I'll try to say them really quickly. One is you multiply those kind of behaviors by millions or hundreds of millions.
Or billions.
Yeah. It adds up. And also it's just part of a lifestyle that we all need to, live this lifestyle where we're constantly thinking about, avoiding waste, reusing things, repairing things, buying durable goods, living more simply. It just all kind of contributes to this mindset that once you start doing it, it just comes naturally to you. Your footprint will shrink. And I'll say just this last thing, if the hundreds of policymakers let's just say in Washington, D.C., making policy for the United States, if they were all living lifestyles like that, it would be easier for them to be making policies that are actually good for the planet instead of dead planet policies.
Couldn't agree more.
All right.
Well, I personally have found the conversation that we had with our guests on today's episode, and with you, of course, Dad, to be really important. And I would encourage our listeners, if you also find what we discuss on this podcast to be important, to share the episode with the people you love or people that you know that need to be educated about these topics.
Yeah, I think you said that you couldn't wait to share one of our recent episodes with your husband.
It's actually the think tank, the part 1 and part 2. As we were recording them, I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, Matt has to listen to this stuff. Because like I've mentioned, we're in our child rearing years and we just got married. And so we're getting asked a lot by people whether we're going to have children, and we're trying to decide, do we want that? Is that going to make the world a better place or not? We're trying to make that decision.
So you're swimming in a sea of pronatalism. Swimming,
absolutely, or drowning perhaps. So I thought that this would be a good listen for us to listen to and then have an informed conversation about.
Great. Be sure to follow the podcast on your podcast app so you don't miss an episode.
And check out the GrowthBusters online community at groups.io.
And thanks as always to Jake Fader for writing and producing the GrowthBusters theme that you hear at the open and close of the podcast, and to Carlos Jones for singing it.
And head over to growthbusters.org to learn more about the issues we touch on in the podcast and get on our email list and donate to support the podcast.
That's right. It's a nonprofit project, and we run on your support, so thank you for that. Thanks for listening, sharing, and doing your part. We've got a planet to save.
Some may dream to pave mountains and streams, but not me. I'm a growth buster. Some may just want more, but don't know what it's for, but not me. I'm a growth buster. Don't want a solution at the cost of pollution. They think bigger is better at the cost of the weather. But no, not us. We are the growth busters. Calling, 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 calling.